So I'm happy to be able to present to you some findings from a study that was conducted of efforts by civil society organizations and farmers organizations to develop the value chain. Not just the farm level interventions, but from farm or seed to store chain of enterprises. And my main purpose, I think, for being asked to do this is to just start the conversation with you. Because the main point is to try to focus on what is the role or what could be helpful or not so helpful roles of LGUs when it comes to developing the value chain. Okay? So please feel free to comment or to ask questions or to give your reactions at any time. So that's the purpose there of this discussion. I think we all know what we mean by the value chain. It's the supply chain from, but operating within a certain enabling environment. So it is made up of the product and process flow, the information and money flow, and the enabling environment. It is not just the movement of the product from inputs to the store, but also the provision of support services, including business development, technology, credit, so on and so forth. Next, please. One more click, please. Okay, so there are actually about 9 areas where the value chain, where the CSOs and the farmers organization tried to develop the value chain and connect it to local markets and to Metro Manila. Okay? The study I conducted was based on interviews with officers and members of 20 cooperatives, 6 marketing and business development support providers, 4 financial institutions, and 2 wholesalers. Next, please. And I would like to focus, of course, we had a certain approach to doing the study, but my purpose is to focus and to identify and discuss with you what were the factors which make for success and what are the factors which might hinder success, and what can we learn from all of the experiences of the people on the ground trying to make the value chain a successful initiative. I am just the student of all these things. The real hero of the initiative is the farmer entrepreneur. In fact, I'd like to highlight the case of 2 farmer entrepreneurs, one in Bicol, Pecuaria, the other in Sultan Kudarat. They were, of course, farmers, high school graduates, driven by a social purpose, but business-minded, strong leaders, and respected and trusted within the community. This is the general profile of the kind of person really to look for and to work with, because apparently in those 7 areas I looked at, in the 2 areas, the presence of a strong local champion, this type of farmer entrepreneur profile, seems to have made a big difference. Okay. What have they been able to facilitate in their areas? One, scaling up organic primary production. When this farmer started in Bicol, he attended a course on organic farming with 4 of his brothers. And when they returned, they started applying it. They started with 5 hectares. Today, it's close to 1,000 hectares, which means basically, one way or the other, they have been able to influence many other farmers in their area. Okay? But there was a lot of things to learn along the way. They were able along the way to link the farmers to the financing they needed, the certified organic technology they needed, the markets, especially in Metro Manila, and I think UMFI made a presentation earlier, they were actually the key to establishing organic rice in Metro Manila supermarkets. And that was a big boost. These farmer entrepreneurs, whom I think we should call the hero of the value chain development, were really out to address very serious socioeconomic and environmental issues. Poverty, of course, widespread soil acidity, which I found generally nobody was monitoring. Everybody was talking about soil acidity, nutrient depletion, but I could not find any organization that was seriously monitoring. This is really shot up rather quickly and dramatically. Now I think oil prices are beginning to go up again. As we all know, oil prices have a direct bearing on the cost of chemical fertilizers, and that this cost is a major component of the cost of rice. So I think it is a serious risk to monitor, which I'm not sure who is monitoring. But these farmers were obviously concerned, and that was one of the motivating factors for them. They were instrumental in implementing a cost-benefit approach through a business organization, cooperative in Bicol, corporation in Sultan Kudarat, that was expected to earn a surplus or a profit. In other words, although their motives were social, they had a clear business orientation and a business approach. And they somehow made it in spite of many droughts, floods, peace and order issues, and political interference that they encountered along the way. And of course, operating in a difficult infrastructure and institution. So, in my opinion, given all of those challenges, what they have done, scaling up from 0 or 5 to 500 or 1,000 hectares, is not a small accomplishment. And in my opinion, that really should set the tone for what we mean by and what we expect through value chain development. This is not to trivialize that we are able to convert 5 hectares, 10 hectares, 100 hectares. Those are important. But if you want to make an impact on the economy, especially the local economy, I think this is the kind of results, although ambitious, admittedly, that we should expect from value chain development. Of course, there is a supporting cast behind the hero, civil society organizations, who were very instrumental in community organizing and mobilization, policy research, advocacy, institutional linkages, and providing legal assistance when there were issues. International development agencies, basically providing the resource. NGAs, LGUs, increasingly participating, supportive, and effective in value chain development. And that is a euphemism for saying at the early stages, the NGAs and LGUs were not a particularly important factor in the development of the value chain. However, I think increasingly there has been more awareness and support forthcoming from LCEs and LGUs. The scope of value chain development is rather ambitious because they were looking to develop the markets, expecting higher farm prices, expecting that there will be ready buyers for the products of the farmers. They were expecting to develop the farms as productive and profitable enterprises. They're expecting to scale up the farms in terms of number of farmers and number of hectares covered. And on top of that, expecting that there will be an equitable sharing of roles and work between men and women on farm and off farm. Of course, they were also attempting to invite the financial institutions to try and finance these types of organic producers. trying to increase both the number and the quality of processors of organic rice and muscovado. Of course, they were ultimately trying to help poor families to increase their income and the range of sources of income, influencing at the same time the equitable distribution of work within the house in the context of farmer. They were trying to create and even transform CSOs into business development providers, so that you had NGOs whose expertise was in health, but trying to get into business development because there were so few. There were so few business development support providers for value chain development. And finally, trying to influence the environment so that the policies, institutions, values, entrepreneurial competencies, and work. This is a big thing to take on. No? You need to have an heroic vision or an enormous amount of energy to want to take on this kind of challenge to develop the value chain. So what I will do is try to discuss some lessons learned, not trying to say that this is all of it, but some that appear to be obvious or at least identifiable, and to invite you to give your own observations and comments. At the level of markets, especially linking farmers to the markets, Metro Manila markets, for example, like SM or Unimark or something. Good news. There is a market somewhere. Of course there is a market, but my point here is that there was a tendency to confuse value chain analysis with the development of a marketing strategy. So that at some point, after all the hype about value chain analysis, people were asking, so where are the markets? Apart from UMFI, who else is buying? If everybody else is shipping to UMFI, who else can we ship to? UMFI can only buy so much at a given time. So that is just to underline that it is, you still have to understand who are the market segments for both muscovado and organic rice, and what they are looking for, and how do you bring the products to them in a way that they will keep buying again and again. Secondly, if you establish the retailer who proves to be successful, like UMFI, more retailers will come. So that I think now you find there are competing retailers who will gladly absorb produce, organic produce, and retail them to the same supermarkets. So the lesson there is if your business is successful, expect that there will be competition. People will hear about your success and will try to come in. And in fact, if there are no clear guidelines for regulating market conduct or performance, the competition could be pretty messy. Meaning, you would find yourself, that's not fair. Well, it's not yet fair. Nobody's regulating what is fair. The approaches within the efforts had to do more with redistributing the price margin, meaning get the farmer to get more of the price margin instead of the so-called middlemen and the other people in the marketing chain. That is easier said than done, because once you start to, even if you're a cooperative, you start to pay higher prices to your farmers, that makes you less competitive compared to other traders. So that we found many cooperatives actually not transferring the higher margins, but paying them what the other traders were paying. And they said, well, that's how we can keep alive. So the goal of redistributing price margins is easier said than done. maybe if there are ways to increase the total value added so that everybody gets a little bit more, those might be alternative approaches to improving market performance. At the level of the farm, some in Bicol, for example, they have developed the flexibility to mix and match. If you want red rice, we'll give you red rice. If you want brown rice, we'll give you brown rice or black rice, or because everybody now is into white organic rice. So if you want to stay ahead of the competition, you try other colors. But that means your farmers should be flexible enough and efficient enough so that if you say ready in 4 months or 6 months, you can make a commitment to the traders. That is not easy to do, no? But somehow the capacities are being developed in some places. This is something very curious finding, except for a few areas, namely the 2 provinces. The promise of higher net incomes through organic farming is still just that, a promise. Could you please click on the cost and returns document? Link there. A little bit down, please. This is a comparative of the net returns to organic and conventional farming. A little bit down, please, until you reach the net income, net returns row. So you see land preparation, weeding differences further down below. There, net farming income, do you see that? Net farming income, organic is 43,500, and a little bit to the right, please. To the right. And up. 30,000. So effectively about 13,500 more. If any business-minded person would jump, right, into this higher net income activity, well, they did not. They have not. Except in those 2 areas that I mentioned, Bicol and Sultan Kudarat for organic sugarcane farming. And it's important to find out why and how were these 2 areas able to do it and scale up. Close, please. Some of the factors which facilitated the scaling up, of course, you have the local champion, whom we can refer to as the hero of value chain development. Community mobilization seemed to have played a role, meaning somebody went door to door talking to farmers. The person was ridiculed, insulted, told to go away because they were busy, but the person persisted with the help of the local champion until gradually, farmer by farmer, they decided to give it a try. When they harvested, somebody actually bought the produce, and they bought at a higher price. That was a big factor in convincing people, farmers, to shift, and to convince the next door farmer to also do it. In organic rice, the price differential was really 2 pesos at most. Most of the time, actually 1 peso or even less. For Muscovado, sugarcane farming, over several years, from 14 pesos per kilo in Sultan Kudarat, it jumped to 40 pesos per kilo. Plus, the farmers felt happy that their products were in a Metro Manila supermarket. That was that made them proud or happy. So that was a facilitating factor. The technology was present, although in Bicol, the farmer said, the original farmer said, it took them 7 years to improve the technology so that it could answer most of the objections of local farmers. Like, there's a lot of weeding to do, you have to make your own organic fertilizer. You know? What about the rats? What about the pests? It took them 7 years to learn and to improve the approach so that more and more farmers could be more friendly. Trained extension workers available 24/7 because they were the neighbors. What they did was they trained other farmers in different areas to act as the local experts and just gave them an honorarium. I thought it was a very simple approach, cost-effective approach to making the advice. If you're a farmer and the rats are there and the insects, you don't want to wait until it's office hours to find out what to do. You want to know as soon as possible, what do we do about the stem borer? So this was an important support in scaling up. Of course, water and land use. Water was used in organic rice to suppress weeds and to control insects and other pests. So if there was no water and if they had no control of water levels, then it was more difficult. In this case, they were able to do that. Land use is, I think there was a discussion earlier about land use planning. If your next door neighbor is spraying chemicals, even if you're religiously following organic agriculture practices, your farm is contaminated. So that is a big issue actually when it comes to, if you compare the areas that were successful in scaling up to the areas that were not so successful, there were clearer demarcations about where you can do organic farming and where you cannot. Increasingly, of course, good management, and our heroes were saying they don't even have to be professional AIM type managers. They have succeeded fairly well with farmer managers, well, like that, but who had their nose on the business and who were there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And also quick learners. Business linkages, of course, to those who will finance, to those who will trade, who will buy and sell, so on and so forth. And increasingly, NGAs and LGUs. In Sultan Kudarat, the personal ties of the local farmer entrepreneur with many government officials, the mayor, the governor, was very helpful in providing the infrastructure support and the policy environment for them to succeed. Some hindering forces to scaling up, of course, unfavorable land and water use conditions, wait and see attitudes of the farmer. So why does the farmer not jump into higher net income activities? Obviously, organic rice farming is more profitable. Why are they not converting in big numbers? Because they are waiting and seeing first. Of course, natural and man-made catastrophe. Other factors, small and fragmented farm holdings, land tenure issues. The benefit you get varies a lot depending on the size of your land, of your farm, and whether you are amortizing owner or shared tenant or farm worker. You have a different, there is a sharing formula for Muscovado depending on whether you're the owner, a lessee, you're a owner miller, or a worker, or a shared tenant. So you get different economic returns depending on your land tenure status. Of course, we may expect again, and this applies to the areas where they were scaling up. Once farmers see it can be done, and it can be done with higher incomes, expect them to come in greater numbers. We expect the Metro Manila rice markets to be flooded with white organic rice from different types of farmers who all need the additional income. So how do you continue to make a living out of that? Again, but if you remember, the net income is still quite high. And there's still, and then furthermore, there's still room for bringing down costs further. As more competition, as more farmers start to produce the same thing, the only way to stay above is to improve your productivity, and that becomes a very important future initiative, or that you should start now actually. Overall, the farm is still the weakest link. If the farmers sneeze, everybody else along the value chain will catch a cold. UMFI had a problem just last year because they could not find Muscovado to sell to SM because there was a drought in Sultan Kudarat. As a result, they lost their share. I don't know if they recovered that share. SM went to another supplier. I think it's Sugar Mill in Negros. Work sharing is negotiable, meaning the role of men and the work of men and women seems to vary from province to province. Meaning it's not hard and fast that the women will only do the planting and the harvesting and the weeding. There are some provinces where it's also the men, and the women do other things. Okay? So it's depends. Okay. When it comes to the firms, meaning the financial institutions, the traders, the processors, for a number of financial institutions, it was the first time that they lent to organic farm producers, and it was a good experience generally. Although admittedly they were given loan guarantees, but a number of them said they would continue lending even without the loan guarantees. Business scale processing is feasible even on a small and medium scale given certain conditions. That's what I said. If farms sneeze, everybody else along the value chain will catch a cold. This one was interesting. The co-op financial institution was lending to the co-op processor, but they were fighting over terms and conditions for loan repayment. Well, what do you expect? They're both in business. What that means, I think, is that as more and more financing private firms come into the value chain, you will find that they will naturally compete with each other. And if there are no clear guidelines for market conduct and performance, the competition can be counterproductive and not so supportive for the overall development of the value chain. For the families, the impact of higher incomes from organic rice or Muscovadi firms is limited by access to livelihood assets, as well as harder to address constraints such as their educational attainment, how much of problem-solving skills they learned throughout elementary and after they dropped out of school, the farm size, the tenure status, as I discussed earlier. Participation in the organic agribusiness value chain may alleviate but not reduce poverty. If we're talking about 1 hectare, 0.5 hectares, less than 3 hectares, you do the math, no? You compute the net income there. You multiply by 2 and divide by 12. That's roughly the monthly family income without additional livelihood activities. And generally, it's not enough. And the more children you have, the more it is not enough. Okay? So, it may help, but it is not enough. Given land, farm sizes and farm tenure conditions. The fewer the assets of the family, the more severe the workload becomes for everyone, including the children. So the shared tenants and the farm workers have to do more off-farm or non-farm work in order to make sure the family earns. And when that happens, the children have to share in some part of the farm work and even the family work. And I think that's when they start dropping out of school. And when it comes to equitable sharing between men and women, everything is negotiable except the laundry, apparently. Wherever I went, it was for some reason, which I did not find out, the woman was doing the laundry always, even if it had to be at night, even midnight. I don't know why. My study did not go deep enough to find out. But I think that's the hardest part. That's the one I read actually. Well, ironing is really because there's no appliance for ironing, pero kung laundry, mahirap pa rin if you don't have the appliance. But that's just my imagination. Okay? When it comes to business development support organizations, there are very few actually, or at least very few who will work with small farmers and who will work with the value throughout the value chain. And many of the business development support providers were really civil society organizations, NGOs, who want more of a benefit as opposed to a cost-benefit orientation. Meaning benefit means, in benefit mentality is, this makes sense as long as there's a benefit. As opposed to, this makes sense because the costs are reasonable compared to the benefits. There's a difference. If you're mentoring somebody in business, you have to be mentoring them on cost benefit, not on benefit only. So that's one of the constraints, I think, in the institutional environment. Co-ops have limited BDS capabilities, but a few have been able to develop very focused and practical business development support services. Wholesalers often have to act as business development support providers to secure steady supplies of their products. And nobody really teaches the art of managing successes. And this is the main risk, I think, of the successful so far farmer entrepreneurs. How do you manage your success? Nobody was really monitoring risks. Next time. And this is what risks, so on and so forth. Let's just say the institutional environment is not really that well developed yet. Next, please. So the call to LGUs for entrepreneurial leadership, I think, has to do with distinguishing between helpful and not so helpful interventions. At local levels, the policy for organic value chain development has to be more specific than just saying the purpose of the policy is to give farmers more options. But if you cannot put organic and inorganic land side by side, there needs to be clearer guidelines. So those are some examples of possible interventions. Next, please. Less helpful practices we uncovered along the way. LCEs telling business firms how much the price should be. It's like saying repeal the law of supply and demand. Creating badly governed financing programs which do not really achieve the purpose. Ambiguous policies. Next, please. That's not to say that there are many things that can be done. In fact, the organic movement has developed local industry associations which offer many opportunities for interface with LGUs. And some key intervention points might be policy, land and water use, infrastructure, farm extension, but available 24 hours, 7 days a week, regulation and supervision of standards, market conduct, antitrust, cost of doing business, so on. And overall, not just benefit, but benefit per unit cost. I think even LGUs need to think about the cost of providing the support to value chain development so that in the long run it will pay for itself. Thank you.